All right. So what was the next stop that you wanted to talk about?
The Netherlands. We had several things happen in the Netherlands. The people who sponsored our lecture there were from the ICSE, International Center for Sustainable Excellence. And it was a weekend when there were several things going on. There was the Earth Charter was having its 10th anniversary, and they had another group of people who were speaking to business people, and they asked Jacques to join them to speak to these people. And because he spoke there, then we were invited to the Earth Charter's 10th anniversary at the Queen's Palace at The Hague. And it was from the UN. The Earth Charter was put on by the UN, and it was started by Gorbachev. And we were kind of hoping that maybe Gorbachev would be there and we'd be able to talk to him about the direction of the Venus Project. But I think the last minute he didn't come. We were expecting him to come. But anyhow, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Earth Charter, but they are the group associated with the UN who is supposed to be the forefront in fighting for environmental protection, sustainability, human rights, building sustainability in a peaceful global society. But it was really kind of horrifying. We sat the whole day there while the Queen came in, made her performance, and left again, and listened to very emotional pleas for all these things that they advocate. And we got a chance to stand up and talk about the direction of the Venus Project very briefly, me and Jacques. And it was like watching deers in a headlight. They had no idea. They were stunned. They had no idea what we were talking about. We were talking to them about how you can't have sustainability when you have banks keeping you in perpetual debt and keeping countries in perpetual debt. They had no idea where the problems arose. They didn't know the causes of the problems. So it really got nowhere. We really didn't have enough time to present anything, but whatever we did present, they had no idea. And it really reminded me of what Jacques always talks about, how we talk at people rather than to them. Right. They had no background to understand this, nor was there any inquiry. But they had bankers and lawyers and businessmen who were heading this as well. So, and we really got shut up too, because we separated into certain groups for about an hour during lunchtime, and we got off to the Sustainable Cities group. And Jacques was supposed to speak for several minutes. We were supposed to show the video. Somehow the video didn't work, and when Jacques spoke, they really shut him up before he was finished, which kind of annoyed me. So I grabbed the mic and started talking about the resource-based economy, and the moderator interrupted me as well, and I was shouting over him at the end, but it went nowhere. So it was really kind of frightening, the whole thing.
I remember talking to you about that, and it's funny because of all the crazy conspiracy theories that came up from that. And I'm actually really happy that you told that story, because some of the people who are just waiting with their just drool coming out of their mouths, hoping to be able to prove that we're all part of some evil elite New World Order, said, oh, and then they went to this evil conference, and they were obviously, neck to neck and elbow to elbow with that queen who's a member of the Bilderberg group, and I'm just like, that's not what happened at all, guys. It amazes me, because the stuff that people will just make up, and it's like, as you just told the story. You told the story, and in the story, you went there, you talked to some people. They weren't really interested in what you had to say, and in fact, they kind of tried to censor you, which it actually reminds me of another one of those New World Order conspiracies that was linked when somebody was talking about I forget the name, CIS or something, and I talked to Jacques about it actually on one of the previous shows, was that's supposed to be the World Charter thing is supposed to be this New World Order nonsense that's supposed to be this thing that everybody's going to sign. We're all going to get rid of our rights, and then this other thing, the CIS, the Center for Human Studies or whatever, Jacques told me the story about that. I think I asked him about that in Michigan. I can't remember. And then Jacques explained to me, he was like, well, I went there, I talked. They didn't really want to hear what I had to say, and in fact, some of them were kind of rude. And
it was like 1984.
Right.
The story. It was a terrible monetary interpretation of the future.
Mm-hmm. But the point is, though, is that you didn't go there and all, sit down and have a big club meeting on how to take over the planet. And the thing about it is that even with, there are some people that were on the guest list for that were supposedly, high and the mighty. But I've looked into the history of that particular group, and they're, struggling for funding. If they were, because even if you look on Wikipedia, ironically, it says that was supposed to be the secret, strategists of the New World Order. Well, then why is it begging for money? It comes back to the same kind of silly theories that we hear. Remember, you're supposed to be bankrolled by the Rothschilds and
childish stuff.
And that's why we're, looking for donations and maybe having to sell our land, is because we're obviously bankrolled by the New World Order.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
All kinds of artificialities.
Right. So, all right. Well, that out of the way, I'm actually really glad you told that story, because people have taken that out of context and made little videos of it, because I guess they talked to you a little bit about it on TeamSpeak one day.
I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know what they were getting at. Otherwise, I would have answered differently. But, I just took this very innocently, because they were trying to pin me down, saying, are you associated with the United Nations? I said, no, I couldn't think of anything. And then they brought this up, and I thought, oh, that was ridiculous.
Well, that's, I don't think that people remember that, you guys have been doing what you've been doing long since before you ever met Peter. And there's nothing wrong with what Peter's doing, but then they always assume that this must mean that you guys are in on all the conspiracy theories. So, when I talked to you about it earlier, you were like, you don't buy into the conspiracy theory that the United Nations is some big evil thing that's bent on world domination. So if any interest you might have in talking to them is for the purpose of getting this, this idea out. The same thing you did at that conference that, with the Queen, was you tried to tell your message, and since your message is a little bit too egalitarian, obviously they didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, well, they were kind of do-gooders. Some of the people were really nice people, really meant well, but they were trying to fix things within this system. They thought that could be done. They had no idea what was causing the problems. They had no idea about the monetary system, the banking system. They appealed to ethics and goodwill. And
right.
It doesn't work that way.
Because that's working so great.
Yeah. So after that, they took a picture of everybody who attended that meeting at the steps of the palace at The Hague. And so Jacques and I got right up front, right in the middle, because we wanted to have the Venus Project represented there. So evidently that picture was going around on that video that was supposed to be against, saying that we're part of the New World Order.
Because you clearly, were best buddies with everybody there. And everything that they have there at that point is all conjecture and just invented stuff. The funny thing is that it's when people do stuff like this. It's recently, I just had actually something that came up about that, because the silly people, in particular, if they have a religious problem with what we're doing, the ones who said that we worship the morning star because Venus is the morning star. And then I had to pull out a biblical quote at the end of Revelation. It's like the last line of Revelation. Jesus says he's the morning star. And it's funny because I brought that out, and it shut so many people up, because at that point, as it is already, it was like Kevin Bacon logic. It was, well, Venus is the morning star, and the morning star must be Lucifer. And I was like, no, the morning star is Jesus. They're like, what are you talking about? So I gave the Revelation quote. If anybody wants that, you can email me at vtd@V-RADIO.org, and I'll be happy to share with you the actual quote from the Bible where Jesus says he's the morning star. The whole argument is ridiculous, but of course, most of these people were not going to be jumping all up on the idea of, oh, okay, well then I guess the Venus Project must be the Jesus Project. They didn't like that interpretation because that doesn't really suit their interests in making us look evil.